As we turn the page, match day 10 in the 2024 MLS season is upon us, and Nashville Soccer Club is back in action after a week off and heading down to South Beach to face a very familiar opponent in Inter Miami. It is a Wednesday night during the MLS regular season here on 104.5 The Zone. It means one thing: NSC Backstage is on the air. And how about this? The squad back together in studio alongside Will Boling. Jackson Williams is our producer. I'm Lucas Panzica, and Jalil Anibaba is with us on this fine Wednesday evening. Hello, fellas.
What's happening?
Let's go. Let's
Jalil
go.
Anibaba gracing us with his presence tonight. It is a momentous occasion in the Music City.
AppleTV's own.
Listen, if you get the crew of three back together, it's trouble. It's just problems in the best way. It's amazing. We're here. We're in the station, in the studio. It just feels great to be back with my boys. What can I say?
Well, we are talking about some problems, not necessarily in the best way tonight, but Nashville Soccer Club just looking to get back on track this weekend. The boys in gold after a weekend off last week with one win in the last 8 matches in all competitions, and they're looking to revamp this point in the season against the team that's currently on top of the Supporters Shield standings in Inter Miami. This was Gary Smith following Nashville's 2-1 loss against Philadelphia Union at Geodis Park 2 weeks ago.
When you lose two high-caliber players, two players that have played at international level, you're going to see the difference. There's no two ways about it. However, I think we should also expect that the standards of the guys coming in are going to be good enough to give us an opportunity, especially at home, to win games. There's a combination of I think difficulties that the group's having right now, and it certainly is underpinned by players missing. One is that the rate at which we're conceding goals is a problem, and to your point, I think a couple of those individuals out of the team right now might be a help. And the second one is, I think, a standard, a quality, an expectation in possession. And it's far too many times that the ball's turned over unnecessarily so. There are too many situations that look as though they're going to be encouraging and don't happen. And that in itself, I do believe, is creating a lack of confidence in the group. And certainly not enough opportunities to build pressure and feel as though, there might be a turning point in the game here. The simple fact was that Philadelphia took off a defender and put on a midfield player. They played with a little bit more energy and a system that they have used for a long time, a goal down. And that energy created some serious problems in our group in managing the ball. There were too many challenges missed. There was panic that was set in from an extra bit of energy. We've got to be better than that. That is for sure.
Some things to work on, per the Nashville manager, Gary Smith. Jalil, does the week off come at a good time for Nashville? Not just to try and get key players back, Walker Zimmerman, Shaq Moore, Tyler Boyd, for example, out of the lineup against Union, but even just to have that extra time to work on some of those breakdowns that Gary's been talking about.
Yeah, I mean, the three of us, we've been talking about it this week. Whether it's on Spotlight, whether it's here or just, off air, amongst ourselves, this past bye week has come at a really good time. Sometimes when things aren't going your way, you just need to get on the training pitch. You need to be able to either play inter squads that don't have the same, level of importance, to be able to kind of get back to confidence levels in terms of executing things that you're very good at, weaving in the ethos back into the club. And a lot of that stuff typically is defending, doing some of the nitty gritty, work that is required to grind out results. But also too, Nashville hasn't really had like a consistent, solid way to be able to train, because it's been game after game after game. And that's really good if you're producing results. If not, you kind of want the schedule to slow down a little bit. So this bye week has really come at a good time.
And Jalil, you hear Gary Smith talk about it there, and the level we talk about a lot with this Nashville team is defensively, and having a backbone that is a strength of Gary Smith teams, of Mike Jacobs' assembled teams, and of Nashville SC's club history, Nashville SC has given up the second most amount of goals in the Eastern Conference this season at 13. The team they will play this weekend, Inter Miami, one of three that have allowed more at 14 goals. What is the common theme for this team right now, and why, in your opinion, the defensive output and those numbers maybe aren't as good as they typically are for the boys in gold?
Yeah, the common thread is just the inability to finish out matches, and that's something that we typically don't see with the team here in Nashville. It's typically if the team goes up at halftime or any time in the second half, whether it's by 1 goal or 2, they're slamming the door shut. They're winning the game almost for sure. Statistically speaking, over 4.5 years now, that's what we've seen. But uncharacteristically, in the first 1/3 of the season, we're not seeing that. And to me, it doesn't really matter who's in the lineup, because that's never been the case. When I was lacing up, after I was lacing up until this season really started, it was whoever's number was called, whatever position you're playing, you keep goals out of the back of the net, especially late. And what can happen too is when it happens once or twice or 3 times, it almost starts to be what seeps into your subconscious, your psyche, and you almost kind of know, like, damn, we might give up a goal late here. And that's hard to shake when you get in that way. But what I always talk about with this team specifically is that there are so many seasoned veterans in the locker room that are able to flip the script and to be able to pull the team out of adverse moments. If you look even as far as, let's say, 9 months back, Nashville was not in a good way going into Leagues Cup. They were not. They had a stretch of games where they had about 4 or 5 red cards in a stretch of like 3 or 4 games where nobody knew what was going on. But since there's so many veterans in that locker room, they're able to really get back to the basics very, very quickly, have a Leagues Cup run. That was one to remember.
Jalil, the positive for me, maybe going before the bye week, and we've talked a lot about this, and I think you'll agree, is Jacob Schaffelberg, is the emergence of guys. And I think when you look at what has been good through this far of the season, doesn't it feel like that conversation has to start with Jacob? He got 3 assists in the last 2 games. He will be playing Miami this weekend again if he's in the team, and that's a team, obviously. He had a spectacular performance again in CONCACAF Champions Cup. Does it feel to you like he is the positive you build on now out of this bye week moving forward into this next phase of games?
Yeah, I think just quite frankly, going into not just his super recent run of form, but also what he's able to do in 2023. Coming into 2024, he hits the ground running with both Nashville and the national team, the Canadian national team. And he's become a star in Nashville. He's a player that is heavily relied upon, a guy that's loved in the locker room. He's just a genuinely dope dude. And he balls out week in and week out. He's getting multiple assists in games. He's the one that is really pushing back whatever outside back he's going up against. And anytime you have a player that is by and large going to win their individual battle, you just keep giving that player the ball, and that's Jacob Schaffelberg right now for sure.
We've talked a lot about the lack of time that Tyler Boyd, Sam Surridge, and Hani Mukhtar have had on the field together, and how well that clicked for 30 minutes in the first leg against Mocha of CONCACAF Champions Cup before the injury started to kind of layer in for those players. And I don't know what Tyler Boyd's status will be for Saturday. Injury report will come out later in the week. But now we got to talk about getting a chance to see Tyler Boyd, Hani Mukhtar, Sam Surridge, and Jacob Schaffelberg all on the field together. Schaffelberg's kind of earned the right to be in that conversation, right, with the consistency of his play and of Sam Surridge's play as well. Guys, 20 goal contributions in all competitions between those 4 players. It feels like we got to include, Will, to your point, Jacob Schaffelberg in that conversation of Nashville getting back on track. And they're scoring goals right now is the thing. The defensive miscues have been what have let Nashville down. But to see those 4 players get some time on the pitch together, how much can that help a team that's struggling a bit defensively and maybe take the pressure off?
It can help in certain ways, but ironically, to your point, Lucas, Nashville isn't struggling to score goals right now. But it can help though. The more goals that you score, the better you're going to be suited to win games or just continue to push your team forward. Will, you bring up an earlier point. One of the only teams in the Eastern Conference that's given up more goals than Nashville this season is Miami. They've given up 14. Nashville's given up 13. But on the flip, they've scored 19. So if you can score with a high octane offense, if you're giving up 2 goals a game, that doesn't really matter. But how many teams in a league can say that? How many teams have the money or the prowess to be able to say, all right, I don't care how many goals you score, we're going to score more. I think when you look at Miami's most recent fixture against Kansas City, that is literally the game that they're playing. It's kind of like the early 2000s, late 90s Brazilian type of style of football where we could ball in the back, but it's more so what we're doing on the attacking end.
You're speaking Lucas's language, talking about that era of Brazilian football as well. I mean, we can go talk about R9 and Ronaldinho and all those cats.
Much more of an Argentinian flavor to it when it comes to Miami.
I mean, we're talking about people on the show. If I'm going to cater to anybody's love interest when it comes to football, I'm catering to Lucas tonight because we all know we aren't going to cater to what Arsenal's about.
No, we are
today.
not.
We might have to address it to Will's chagrin.
There are no goals to talk about. What are we we're talking about scoring goals.
Well, there was one. There's a Bayern
My
goal.
team has not scored a
that
goal
we can talk about a lot
in a week.
It has been interesting to watch Miami and kind of the ups and downs of this season because while they do lead the Supporters' Shield standings and obviously the Eastern Conference, there was a stretch there where they struggled, where you saw the CONCACAF Champions Cup struggles come into play there, Will, where Miami, for its own stretch, I believe it was 5 straight games, couldn't find a win, and there were 3 losses in there. And last time we were in this studio doing NSC Backstage 2 weeks ago, we were watching their first leg loss against Monterrey, and they were run off the field against Monterrey in the second leg. It does feel like, though, they're kind of back on the rise, and that performance in Kansas City, 3-2, thrilling game. Lionel Messi was unbelievable. 5 goals, 5 assists in MLS play this season. I wonder what Miami Nashville is catching right now, because if you're playing them 2 weeks ago, it feels like a great time to catch Miami. When Messi's sidelined, they do have other injuries to worry about, but it feels like they're kind of back on the ascension, doesn't it?
Yeah, with Lionel Messi this season, Inter Miami has 3 wins. They have not lost, and they have 2 draws. Without Lionel Messi this season, Inter Miami has 1 win, 2 losses, and 1 draw. That includes a 4-0 shellacking at the hands of New York Red Bulls. With Messi, 13 goals for, 5 against. Without him, they've scored 6 goals in those 4 games. They have allowed 9 without Lionel Messi on the pitch. I think, Jalil, too, as someone, you have seen more teams around MLS than we have in your work with AppleTV. You do a great job, your entire crew. The level of the Eastern Conference has also been raised because of Lionel Messi and all of his friends coming to Miami. Not just because of that, but you have specifically right now in the Eastern Conference, you have an injection of money, you have an injection of talent, you have an injection of designated players from around the world who are all on teams that have to play Messi multiple times a year and Miami multiple times a year. We have seen that from teams we have played, but now we see the catalyst of all of it this weekend. Just how much of a raise in level have you seen in the East specifically?
Yeah, it's cracking in the East right now. It's on and popping. If you want to be one of the best teams in MLS, you're playing in the East and you're doing very well. You're doing very, very well. And that's what we're seeing from a Red Bull. We're seeing from Philly. We're seeing from Columbus. My goodness. But then to your point, Will, Miami's at the top of all that. So, and that's quite frankly what you want to see from a league-wide product standpoint. You want to see the best player in the world the best player to ever play the game, who is raising the competition level and raising everybody else's week in and week out performances to make them better, to make games more interesting, exciting, making the storylines more intense and more important. And it doesn't get better than playing and performing against a Miami side, against a Philadelphia side, a Columbus side, a Cincinnati, whoever is toward the top of the league, quite frankly. When you do well against those teams, that's where you earn your stripes, you earn your confidence, and most importantly, you earn your respect and your reputation from everybody else throughout the league that matters.
And I think, too, real quick, when you look at some of the results for Miami, there are a lot of different factors as to why, with and without Messi, they haven't been as good, obviously. He's the Ballon d'Or winner, right? He's probably the greatest player to ever play. When you don't have him on the field, you're not going to be as good. But every year you go into the season, and I think teams will assign point totals for what they want to get out of a game going into a season. And I think going into the season, you look at Montreal and Red Bulls, if you're Inter Miami, and you're thinking, oh, these are games where we might be able to get a rest for Lionel Messi. Might be able to get a rest for some of these guys. And I know Messi was injured for that game against Red Bull specifically, but those are two teams that have beaten you. The two teams that have beaten you this season, who are coming into the season near the bottom of that Eastern Conference table, they have been at the top since the year began. It just goes to show, yes, teams are raising their level in an already very unpredictable league.
I have some trivia.
Let's go.
Is this going to be better than the trivia we played on Spotlight?
I'm not good at trivia, but let's get it. Yeah, let's get it.
We did. For anyone who doesn't know, check it out. NSC Spotlight on Nashville's Apple TV page each and every Wednesday afternoon. The three of us, our wonderful co-host, Liv and Gurian. Yeah, we thoroughly embarrassed ourselves, the three of us, with Liv's trivia questions about the long series between Nashville and Miami. About to play the 7th game, by the way, in all competitions between these two teams within the last calendar year alone. MLS regular season, Open Cup, Leagues Cup, you name it, Nashville, CONCACAF Champions Cup, they have faced each other. But the question is, and you can just throw names at me, Lionel Messi has 10 goal contributions in his first 5 MLS matches. 5 goals, 5 assists. He is one of 4 MLS players in league history to do so. How many of the other 3 can you guys name?
Thierry Henry.
Figured we'll get that one.
Say the question again.
Messi is one of 4 players in MLS history to pick up 10 goal contributions in his first 5 MLS matches of the season. Will named one. There's 2 others.
So
another one is a layup.
Thierry Henry and
First 10 games. Let's see. Cucho Hernandez?
First 5 games.
First 5?
10 goal contributions, first 5 games. Who else
Carlos
can say
Vela.
that? The MVP award's named after him.
Landon
Donovan.
Some respect on his name.
I did see
Is
this
Cucho
earlier
not
this
one of
week,
them?
but I do not remember any
The
of the
third
names.
is Raul Diaz Arce, 1997 DC United.
Yep.
Early days
Second year of the league.
of MLS. But just when you look at this matchup, why has Nashville seemed to match up with Miami better than really any other team they've played in MLS?
Better than any team that Miami has played?
That Miami has faced. I mean,
Okay.
there's the familiarity there. Is that the way both teams are set up? Because, yes, Nashville has yet to get over that hump of getting the win. Very few teams have with a full-strength Miami. But it does feel like Nashville has continuously given Miami the most problems when they faced.
Yeah, contrasting styles. I think, and this is what we're talking about at the top of the show. Normally with Nashville, they limit you to very few looks at goal. The lines are not stretched. They're not open. It's difficult for you to find the danger zones on the pitch, which are normally, of course, in and behind the back line, but behind either the dual sixes or the one single pivot, depending on what formation the team is playing. And then, of course, over the shoulder of the out or of the 2 center backs, I would say. And Nashville typically doesn't open up those windows very much. And what we're seeing tactically on a tactical basis is Nashville has been opening up those danger zones on the field more than they have. So the 3 zones that I mentioned, in behind the back line, off the shoulder of a center back, or in behind the 6 or the dual 6, depending on the formation. Those are where a lot of the Nashville goals have been coming recently. If you look at the first goal against Philadelphia, those two zones are exactly how Philadelphia scores the first goal. Over Josh Bauer's shoulder, that becomes a precarious situation, and then the knockback that goes to Sullivan is in that 6 zone behind the 6s. That makes it difficult. Then bang, boom, they score. So what Nashville has typically done well is they choke teams and they don't let you get in those zones, and it makes for a situation where you pretty much have to be prolific in tight spaces and or exploiting space or set pieces. So that's why when you look at the Leagues Cup final, yes, the goal that Messi scores is in that danger zone, but it's so tight and narrow that only Messi is going to score that first goal, right? Or only someone that can produce a moment of brilliance is scoring that goal. So to answer your question specifically, Lucas, it's for me the fact that Miami will thrive on playing in an expansive way, lulling you to sleep with their possession, then Messi pops up and kills you. Nashville is normally good at limiting teams to prevent them from doing that.
And in these games that Nashville has played with Messi's Miami, only 3 players have scored against Nashville. And it was Robert Taylor at the second leg in CONCACAF Champions Cup who became the third player. Mm-hmm. Really, without a couple of crazy moments of individual brilliance from Lionel Messi in leg 1 at CONCACAF Champions Cup and in the Leagues Cup final, Nashville would have kept Miami scoreless. Yeah. Obviously, Leo Campana is on the doorstep in the final seconds of that game as well, and that's a separate conversation. But Nashville has done a good job not letting anyone else beat them, and the possession styles of that game, I think, also suits Nashville, who want to play in transition. They're fine giving Miami the ball and hitting on the break.
Jalil, thanks for hanging out, man.
Always.
Good to see you.
Wednesday nights are better with the boys.
No
on
doubt.
104.5 The Zone. Let's go.
We'll let Will off the hook for now on talking about Arsenal's elimination from Champions League. Maybe we circle back near the end of the hour because the quarterfinals were electric. I mean, all over the place.
They were.
Semifinals are set in stone. No Premier League teams with City and Arsenal eliminated. He is Jalil Anibaba. You can hear him on the Apple TV call of Colorado-Dallas this weekend with Eric Krakauer. Of course, Will and I will be on the call of Nashville and Miami here on The Zone, which you can also, Nashville on the road, so no Apple TV option, but be sure to tune in this Saturday evening. There are changes coming to MLS, and we talk to Alfonso Mondelo, the MLS Senior Director of Competition, coming up next to talk about some of these new initiatives that are beginning this weekend that will impact the MLS fans starting on Saturday. This is NSC Backstage on 104.5 The Zone. Welcome back. It is NSC Backstage on 104.5 The Zone each and every Wednesday night alongside Will Boling. I'm Lucas Panzica, and it's a pleasure to be joined by a very key figure in the Major League Soccer League office, a former assistant coach in this league. He is MLS Senior Director of Competition, Alfonso Mondelo, here to discuss the off-field treatment rule, the time substitution rule, in-stadium VAR announcements, all going into effect this week in MLS. And Alfonso, thank you, first of all, for being here. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks. A pleasure to be with you. And I'm very excited about these new initiatives that we're undertaking in MLS. MLS is always a league that's been innovative, and this will certainly be something that will be innovative in the world of soccer.
Certainly, and something that we initially anticipated right off the bat, right, in match day one, announced in the preseason, but postponed, obviously, during labor negotiations between Pro and the PSRA. And we'll get into the specifics of these changes and how they will impact games. But first, Alfonso, I'm curious, what did MLS initially set out to accomplish when discussing these initiatives, and how did that process get narrowed down to the ones that we will see incorporated this weekend? And, of course, some of the ones that we've already seen, like the running in-stadium clock during stoppage time.
Well, MLS is always looking to be an innovative league and find the ways to make the games more enjoyable for the fans. Clearly, one of the biggest issues in the world game, not only in MLS, is the time, the wasted time. So when we looked at the possibility of how best to expedite, there were several things that were tried, but these two seem to have quite a great amount of success within MLS Next Pro, which is basically our laboratory, our testing ground for trying new initiatives that could be good for either the game in MLS or sometimes recommendations from IFAB that they don't want to try in the first division and they will try them out on the lower division. So this is how this came about. It has been tried for the last couple of years with great success. I think over 500 games were played with these two rules. They seem to expedite the game without having a negative impact for the game. So now is the time to put it to test in MLS. This has been discussed with the teams in preseason. As you mentioned, we're not able to start it at the beginning of the season due to the replacement referees that were working. But I think now we're ready. We've given the officials a couple of weeks to get acclimatized back to the league, and this weekend we'll go live. So we're really excited about that.
And Alfonso, we are excited to see it this weekend ourselves as well. I want to start specifically with the off-field treatment rule. I know this has really been received well in MLS Next Pro over the last year. What kind of feedback are you hearing from technical staffs, from coaches, from players specifically about the way this off-field treatment rule has improved the game?
Well, so far from those that have been dealing with the rule in the MLS Next Pro, all the feedback has been very positive. They feel that the game has not been impacted negatively, that it has sped up the game, and there have been very few incidents across all those matches over the last 2 years where this actually has become an issue. I think there was only like 6 incidents in the last couple of years where it impacted the game. So I think that this is something that has been very positive. The players have adapted to it. I'm sure there will be an adaptation time in MLS as well, where the players, are now going to have to be facing some things that they had not faced in the past. But I think they will get used to it very quickly.
You mentioned Major League Soccer being an innovative leader and being on the cutting edge of things and changes that are happening in this game around the world. How important is that in your mind for Major League Soccer, taking the lead on things like this and perhaps implementing things now starting this weekend in 2024 that we could see around the world in this game potentially for years to come?
Well, I think that given the sports culture in the United States, we're more adept to try different things, to think outside the box. And sometimes those leagues that have been around for over 100 years are more set in their ways and to find change are more resistant to those things. While in MLS, I think we're capable of trying things out, seeing what works. I mean, we were one of the first leagues to push for the VAR, and now the VAR has become the norm in the sport. So I think it is very positive for the league to be able to think progressively on new ways of how to make this great sport even better.
Alfonso Mondelo is our guest, MLS Senior Director of Competition. For those who don't know, the off-field treatment rule states that if a player with a suspected injury remains on the ground for more than 15 seconds, the referee will stop play, wave the medical crew onto the field to evaluate the player. When safe, the player will be removed from the field and remain off the field for a minimum of 2 minutes for further assessment and treatment. Alfonso saw this in MLS Next Pro starting about midway through the 2022 season. I'm curious, what kind of data was MLS looking for with this rule in MLS Next Pro before bringing it to this level? Was it about a decrease in players leaving games due to injury? Was it about how much more quickly play could resume?
Well, this was more about the teams being incentivized to take advantage of the opportunity, whether you're slowing the game down to manipulate the game, to gain a competitive advantage, or is the player genuinely hurt? So now with this rule, the player is the one that has to decide. So when the referee approaches the player and says to the player, do you need medical assistance? If the player says yes, then the referee will wave the medical personnel onto the field. They'll do an initial assessment, and then they'll take the player off the field, and he'll have to be off the field for 2 minutes to receive treatment. So if the player is not really hurt, he has to be careful with that, because he's going to leave his team down with a player less for a period of 2 minutes. So now the player can decide that, hey, I'm a little banged up. I can go off the field on my own, get the treatment, and then come back in at any time. Or if the player is seriously hurt, then the team can make a substitution, and they do not have to wait the 2 minutes. They can come in at any time. So I think it puts more of an onus on the players to decide if they're truly hurt, or if they're not, and they're going to look into time waste, that could have a negative impact for their club.
And that brings us to the timed substitution rule, requiring that a substituted player exit the field within 10 seconds. Failure to exit within the 10 seconds will cause the incoming player to wait for a 60-second holding period before coming in. At the next stoppage during that holding period, the team will play down a player. So I saw the data point, Alfonso, that this was enacted in MLS Next Pro last year, and 99.7% of the more than 3,200 subs were completed in 10 seconds or less. I got to know, how much of that 0.3% came maybe in match day one with players testing it out a little bit?
Yeah, clearly it was in the earlier part of the season where players were still not used to this and they took their time. But once they saw the impact that it had, that, when they're getting called for a substitution and they walk off the field and they begin to lower their socks or shake hands with everybody and shake hands with the referee to delay the game, that it was going to cause the substitute to come in to be off the field for a minimum of a minute. And not only a minimum of a minute, because then if the game does not have a stoppage, the player would continue to be off the field. So again, now you begin to think of the impact that it could have for your club, and players are beginning to exit in the nearest point of the field or in the nearest sideline without having to come across the field and really delay the game. So we've seen a very positive results with it. And we think that this is something that would be good for the game, and MLS will be a leader in this case, worldwide.
Alfonso Mondelo is our guest, Senior Director of Competition in Major League Soccer. Alfonso, the in-stadium VAR announcements. This is something we have heard a lot about here in Nashville. Fans have asked about this, and now VAR decisions will be explained and announced by the referee to fans in stadium and to broadcast viewers at home. How much do you like this? How much do you think the fan experience now will be enhanced in the stadium and on broadcast for fans that will now further understand some of these refereeing decisions?
I think it will provide more transparency. It will help the fans to understand what the decision is, because sometimes you see the referees make the window and then come back and point the decision without really understanding what happened. So having the referees being able to explain that the goal was disallowed because there was a previous offside, or the penalty was called because there was a foul by such and such player. I think while it will be simple, it will be along the lines of most of the other American sports that we see the referees giving that type of information, whether it be the NFL or the NHL or the NBA. So I think it's part of the culture of American sports. We will be well received, I think, and I wouldn't be surprised if this becomes the norm worldwide as well.
And Alfonso, final one for me, just talking about MLS Next Pro and just the benefit that has been for the league. I know we've really enjoyed getting to watch Huntsville, our affiliate here in Nashville, and getting to see players get that added opportunity there. Obviously, these initiatives by the league being tested and being a success there has been such a benefit. Just how much of a benefit has MLS Next Pro been for you all in Major League Soccer, and how much will you continue to rely on MLS Next Pro moving forward in things of competition initiatives and rule changes and things of that nature?
Look, I don't think you can even put a value on what this has done. This has provided not only a proving ground for players, those players that are coming out of the MLS academies and having this final step to go from being a youth player to becoming a pro. So being in this league at a competitive level is helping to develop those players. It's helping to develop referees. It's helping to develop our coaches. There are coaches who are cutting their teeth now in MLS Next Pro, and there will be in MLS in the future. So I think that this is very important. And then the ability to have a true laboratory in which you can try out these new rules and see what works and what doesn't work. Now, not every one of them is going to be a great rule, but being able to see it over a course of a season, I think is going to be tremendous for this league and for the future of our sport.
Alfonso, what's been the approach as far as the communication of these new initiatives, making it clear to managers, to players, just that trickle-down process from the Major League Soccer front office? What does that look like to ensure that everybody's on the same page as it's implemented this weekend?
Right. So it begins in preseason, where we have meetings with all the clubs, all the players, and all the staff. These meetings are attended by members of Pro and members of the competition department, where all of these rules that are going to be implemented for the season are explained clearly to all the players. There have been follow-up meetings and conference calls for all of the CEOs and all the coaching staff. And now just this week, since we're going to be restarting again, refreshers have been sent out both via emails, and there will also be calls in which the rules will be once again gone over and explained so that it is clear to everybody how they're going to be implemented.
You've been in this league several years now in so many different capacities, whether it's in the front office, on the touchline as a coach. I'm curious, do you ever just have these moments where you kind of take a beat to sort of marvel at just how far the league has come since 1996?
It's unreal. Having been here since almost the start, I was coaching in the league in '98, then in 2001, and this is a complete new league. I mean, this truly has now become one of the, and it's in the process of even going further to be one of the top leagues in the world. The way that players now want to come into this league, they're making this their league of choice, and seeing just over the last 5-6 years, the progress that the game has had, the quality of the games, the quality of the players, the interest from our fans. I mean, it's been truly, truly marvelous and great for the sport, for those of us who have been involved in the sport for a long time. And I think we're just beginning to touch the surface. I think this is going to continue to grow, and this will be one of the best leagues in the world in the near future.
He is Alfonso Mondelo, the MLS Senior Director of Competition. Alfonso, thank you so much for the time, for the perspective as we see these initiatives take effect this weekend, and enjoy the rest of the season.
Thank you guys for your time.
a lot of this is in the same vein, right, of just expediting the game and just removing as much time wasting as possible. And then, of course, in-stadium VAR announcements that, Americans are no stranger to that concept, right, of officials relaying something to the home crowd for that type of transparency. Also a great adjustment. I'm fascinated to see how much of this gets adopted in other leagues around the world. My personal favorite has been in there from the jump. That started on match day 1, and that's the running clock during stoppage time in the stadium. I have been all over that. I have never understood it. I mean, you and I have, and it's not just an MLS thing, right? It's all around the world. I've been to games in Italy and Brazil. You've been to games in England with the Premier League. The clock stops at 90 minutes and it does not continue on, and you're pulling your phone out and you've got your stopwatch. It's never, ever, ever made sense to me, and I was very happy to see MLS recognize that and have that clock continue on in stadium for all of those fans, because I think there's some transparency in that as well. And the onus is not on the fans to keep track of stoppage time the way it is on the referee. So, and
I love, too, that MLS has found a way to be innovative while still keeping the integrity of what this game is, right? This is not groundbreaking, changing the point system, right? This is not, hey, you get a point under these circumstances, but if you win in penalty kicks, maybe you get extra, things of that nature. You're keeping the tradition of the game in place at the Major League Soccer level while still finding ways to improve the integrity of the game and keep players honest in the way that they act on the pitch for 90 minutes. And B, as well, you're making it more entertaining. I mean, 10 seconds to get off the pitch for players in this time substitution rule means we would get to watch more soccer. The off-field treatment rule, where you have 15 seconds to get up, otherwise you are off the pitch, you are helped off the field, and you have to stay off for 2 minutes before you can come back on, means we get to watch more soccer. Yeah. All of these things make this game more entertaining for the viewer at home, and that's an important thing.
Coming up next, we'll take another look at Nashville's upcoming fixture at Inter Miami on Saturday in match day 10. Nashville coming out of a week-long break. You can jump in, 615-737-1045. I see people on the chat on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or Twitch, 1045 The Zone TV. This is NSC Backstage on 1045 The Zone. Match day 10 coming up on Saturday. Nashville Soccer Club heading down to Inter Miami. The boys in gold off last weekend after a 2-1 loss at home against Philadelphia Union. Nashville 14th in the Eastern Conference standings, but Jalil Anibaba said it on Spotlight on Apple TV every Wednesday afternoon. You can't win MLS Cup early in the season. You can't lose it early on. A lot of teams kind of taking their lumps right now, Will Boling, and Nashville, without a doubt, is one of them. I guess the question here is, what do the boys in gold have in store to kind of rise out of this stretch? And I don't know that there's a tougher challenge or setting to do it in than Saturday in what looks like an Inter Miami team that's bouncing back in a big way from a tough 2-week stretch.
There is no doubt about it that a full-strength Inter Miami team is the best team in Major League Soccer. How long they can stay full strength remains to be seen. They have a lot of older players. They have a lot of injury-prone players at this points of their career. Luis Suarez, who for me is the leader for most valuable player in Major League Soccer so far this season, has quite literally hobbled through games for now the last two seasons.
I'm sorry, can we talk about that?
Isn't absolutely.
It amazing? Because Miami's had their rash of injuries. I mean, Messi missed a few games with the hamstring. Messi left the Nashville game, remember, subbed out in the second leg of CONCACAF Champions Cup with a hamstring issue. That was back on March 13th, and he didn't make his return until the Monterrey game. No, excuse me, the Colorado game, April 6th. So Messi missed some games in between. But whether it's Benjamin Kramaski or Redondo, I mean, the list goes on. Aviles, so many names that have gone down along the way. And here's Luis Suarez, just plugging along. He's been healthy. There are times where he looks like he can't stay on both feet, but there he is firmly at the top of the Golden Boot race with 6 goals, tied with 4 other goal scorers.
And 3 assists. He's doing a lot of good things for this Miami team. Saturday's win for Miami at Kansas City in front of 70,000 at Arrowhead Stadium. It was an unbelievable sight. It was a win for the game of soccer in the U.S. It's the 11th time that Inter Miami has scored 3 or more goals in the 22 matches Lionel Messi has appeared in for the club in all competitions. Miami has 15 games of 3 or more goals in the other 134 games in the history of Inter Miami. Let me say that again. That's 11 games in 22 matches with 3 goals when Lionel Messi plays. They have 15 games of that happening in the other 134 in their club's history. They are the best team in MLS. They're the biggest challenge in MLS when they are healthy. And they are pretty healthy right now. As you mentioned, Kramaski coming back. Obviously, they do not have Facundo Farias, who was coming into a very prominent role this season due to an ACL injury in preseason. For me, Lucas, the thing that's interesting about them is the amount of turnover that they have had, even just from the end of last season. You talk about Joseph Martinez, who is setting the world on fire for CF Montreal. Mm-hmm. You talk about Kamal Miller. You talk about DeAndre Yedlin, captain of the team before Lionel Messi got there, and captain of the team with Lionel Messi there at times. Taking him out, Marcelo Weigant coming in, the young right back. The interesting thing about their roster is that all of their defenders are either 21 or younger or 30 and older. Sergei Kristov, an older guy, a Ukrainian center back who is a mainstay in the Ukrainian national team. But you talk about all of their defenders specifically, they are either very, very experienced or not very experienced at all.
Jordi Alba, question mark this week as well. He left with a non-contact hamstring issue in the 71st minute in Kansas City last weekend. So we'll continue to monitor that. Again, injury reports come out later in the week. We brought it up briefly with Jalil. Nashville has seemed to be at its best the majority of the occasions they have faced Miami, whether it was the Leagues Cup final last year, pushing them to the brink with that penalty shootout, scoreless draw, first team to hold Messi's version of Miami to a clean sheet in South Beach late in the regular season last year. And Nashville will, when they hosted Miami in CONCACAF Champions Cup, kind of had their backs up against the wall in a way, not because they were coming off a rash of losses, but because the injuries were starting to pile up and, that was starting to become a narrative. Nashville stepped up in that game, took a 2-0 lead, obviously 2-2 draw to end. Luis Suarez stoppage time header sends it to the second leg tied. But the point is Nashville has had a lot of its best moments against Miami just without getting over that hump. So what's the formula to coming out of this break, potentially still missing some bodies. We'll see what the deal is with Walker Zimmerman, with Shaq Moore, with Tyler Boyd. What's the formula to getting over that hump on the road against a red-hot Miami team?
The consistency in the second half for me is the most important thing I want to see from this team. Put two halves together. The first halves for Nashville have been fine. Nashville has given up 7 points from winning positions this season. Only San Jose Earthquakes, with 12, have given up more points from winning positions in the second half with a lead. That is something that I think Gary Smith will be hyper-focused on through this bye week and moving forward into this Inter-Miami match. How can I affect the game tactically, with substitutions, with changes in shape, with different mentalities, within different phases of the game? Because that is what this sport is all about, is breaking this thing down to 15-minute increments, and even so more than that, getting through phases of the game. When you're on top, can you get a goal in a 10 to 15-minute phase to reward you for being on top at a 10 to 15-minute phase? Because odds are there's going to be a 10 to 15-minute phase later in the match where you give up 2 or 3 corner kicks in a row. You have a free kick. You're hemmed into your own defensive 18-yard box. Can you survive that without giving up a goal, right? Nashville has had a lot of very good phases of play. The quality in this team is still excellent, but that last phase has not been up to Gary Smith's standards. It's not been up to Nashville standards. I need to see a good second half performance, and I need to see this Nashville team start to correct some of the mistakes it's made of late.
And see, hopefully for Nashville, if Sam Surridge can continue the form that he's on, 4 goals, 1 assist in 7 games played in all competitions for the former Nottingham Forest man. We've talked about Jacob Schaffelberg and the form that he's in. 8 goal contributions across competitions for the boys in goal. That's not including the goal he has scored for the Canadian national team in a Copa America qualifier earlier this season. Nashville looking to put it together and do it against the best team currently in Major League Soccer, Inter Miami, on Saturday. Will Boling, looking forward to it as always.
Yes, sir. Can't wait.
Hope you'll join us Saturday night. 7:30 is the kickoff. 7 o'clock is the pregame. You can hear it right here on 104.5 The Zone. Nashville Soccer Club at Inter Miami. Will Boling and myself will be on the call. For our producer as well, Jackson Williams, and our guest, Jalil Anibaba, I'm Lucas Panzica. This has been NSC Backstage on 104.5 The Zone.